Welcome to Acts Christian Church, where you're the head and not the tail.
The year of Thanksgiving.
Welcome to our Thursday night program. As you know, we like to deal with real life issues. We may be a Christian organization, but we need to be real. There are issues out there that I believe we need to engage in, such as the particular subject that I'm about to introduce to you, which is vaccine hesitancy. Now, if I said a few words, I'm sure it will bring you back to maybe, for many, a very dark situation, not just to our country, but the world. Words like isolation, mask, social distancing. The question is, has COVID gone away? Well, we're here to really answer that, and we've got two professionals in the studio today that will, I believe, bring an awareness to us. And so I'd ask you to listen keenly, because I believe we're about to make some adjustments in what maybe you've heard to bring you to a point of moving forward. I'm so honored to have in the studio today Gina, Zelant, and Kerry, Addison, and they're from the Public Health Croydon Council. Now, I know they're gonna really speak from their heart, and I know at the end of the day, you will be enlightened. It's lovely to have you both here, especially on a subject like this. I did say, has COVID gone away? But I'm sure you'll be able to explain to us where we stand today in that situation. It's over to you.
Lovely, thank you, and thank you for having us.
Thank you.
So, no, in the word, COVID hasn't gone away. We know that currently in Croydon, there's about 152 people that have tested positive for COVID. There's likely to be more people that have COVID than that because, as you know, testing isn't mainstream or widespread at the moment. And we currently have about 68% of the population that are vaccinated, that have received any vaccines. They may have only just received the first. And depending on the age group, the likelihood of them being vaccinated differs. So our older populations, we have a significant proportion, up to about 80-something% of them that are vaccinated. When you look at the under 40s, then there's a significantly less, about 35 to 45% that are vaccinated, depending on what age bracket you look at.
Brilliant. So, it's good to at least have that idea, and you're going to bring us into a presentation, what you give and share. But I must admit, when I met you both and I received that presentation, it changed my perspective. And maybe I asked the question, I wish I'd heard this right at the beginning when something like this, that pandemic hit us. Mm-hmm. The knowledge that I left that training session was amazing, and would like you definitely to share that to the viewers out there today. So please go ahead.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thanks very much.
It is an absolute pleasure for both Gina and I to be here with you this evening. We are going to take you through this presentation that we developed, and obviously have delivered this to our community health champions here in Croydon, but we thought it was really important that we get that more widespread, that you can share this information. Gina and I have been working as part of the COVID-19 response team in Croydon Council for over the last year. And as you can imagine, we've been faced with many challenges during this pandemic. And one of them is around the COVID-19 vaccine hesitancy. Now, when the pandemic kind of calmed down for a little bit, Gina and I were able to develop our work, and we developed a vaccine hesitancy toolkit here in Croydon to allow us to kind of home in areas that really needed the focus. So we'll take you through some of the strategies, that we have developed to be able to go out there and not only speak to the communities of Croydon, but to be able to get them vaccinated. Good. And over the last few months, we have seen an increase, not a massive increase, but we have seen an increase in those coming forward for the COVID-19 vaccines. So I'm just going to tell you what we're going to cover briefly, and then I'm going to hand over to Gina. Gina will talk about vaccines in a little bit more detail, and then I'll speak to you about where you can go today, if you want to, or tomorrow, or the weekend, and get your vaccination here in Croydon. So we looked at, what we wanted to get across, and the first thing is really around, vaccines and why vaccinations are important, and really to identify and go back to basics about how they actually work. Because before the COVID-19 vaccine came about, we went and we got routine vaccinations without any questions. So I think with this presentation, we want to get back to basics, like what are vaccinations and how do they actually work? And then I kind of think we want to go back to basics as well, and it's just about how can we actually get this message across to our communities. Yes, we can do our job in public health, but we need, important members of the communities like yourselves having these conversations, with your congregation, with your, with your community and within your communities, and I think that's, really important. So we'll be looking at, how you can converse with confidence, and we'll have like a short video with Dr. Corbett later on, and she has a really good message, a simple message, that we can get this message out. And then after that, just really simply where you can go in Croydon to get your COVID-19 vaccination. And we are heading up to flu season as well.
Yes.
It's going to be the first winter that Gina said that we won't have these restrictions in place like we have done the last 2 winters. So we will have COVID-19 and flu co-circulating.
Wow.
So not only do we need to uptake the COVID-19 vaccination, but we also need to remember about flu as well, because it's still there. Yes. So if you've had your flu invitation to go and get your flu vaccination, why don't you top up your COVID-19 booster if you need a booster? But the offer is still there. It's an evergreen offer at the moment. So what that means is if you haven't taken up the offer of your first or second dose yet, or even your third, it's still there and it's still available. And I think that's important, because some people think, well, I was invited when the programme began and I haven't taken the vaccine. Wow. So should I still come forward? Yes, good. You should still come forward. So I'm going to hand over to Gina, and Gina is going to explain the ins and outs of vaccinations.
Thank you, Kerry.
Excellent.
Yep, so as Kerry said, I'm going to talk a little bit about how COVID infects us, and also about how our body responds and why vaccines are important to help us with this. So to start with, it's important to probably understand a little bit about what a pathogen is. So a pathogen is a bacterium, a virus or a parasite that will enter our body and that will cause disease. And each pathogen is made up of multiple smaller parts, and one of these is called the antigen. Now the antigen part of the pathogen is what triggers our immune system to fight back and have a response. And the response that the immune system comes back with is called an antibody. Now, an antibody is also known as immunoglobulin, and it's a large Y-shaped protein used by our immune systems to identify, neutralise and destroy bacteria and viruses. And you could really think about them as soldiers in your body's defence system. And each antibody is trained to identify a specific antigen. So, for example, when a new pathogen or a new virus such as COVID-19, we're exposed to it and it enters our body, our immune system won't immediately have the right antibodies to neutralise and fight that. Although our immune system is really efficient at developing antibodies and protecting us, it can take a little while to do this. So during that time, you may experience symptoms. If you were somebody that has a clinical risk of getting severely unwell from COVID-19 or other viruses, that would be a point when you could get severe disease. So the point of a vaccine is the vaccine is going to help our body by giving us antibodies so that we identify these antigens from the COVID-19 virus, and so that we can have a quicker immune response and are less likely to have severe disease. And as I said, this is really important for people that may be at clinical risk, so people such as people with diabetes, with respiratory disease, that may be clinically overweight or obese, or with experiencing cancer and having chemotherapy. So I'm going to explain a little bit now about how a vaccine works, the COVID-19 vaccine works. So there's 3 vaccines that are currently are most used in the UK. And this is the Pfizer, the Moderna, and the AstraZeneca vaccine. Now, the Pfizer and the Moderna vaccine use a technology called mRNA. Now, mRNA vaccines, what they do is they take some of the messenger DNA from the COVID-19 virus, and the part that they take is the part of the, it's like a recipe for how to make the spike protein. This is the antigen bit that's going to attach to your cells and inject your cells with the information on how to make more and more and more coronavirus, and that's what makes you ill. So the mRNA vaccines, what they do is they contain some of the RNA, which is like a recipe of how to make the spike protein, and this is delivered into your cells using the vaccine, and I'll explain a little bit later what else is in the vaccine. And then your cell will then look at this recipe and say, okay, I'm going to make lots and lots and lots of these spike proteins now. So they start replicating and making more and more of them. At this point, your immune system kicks in and says, hang on a minute, I need to develop an antibody against this. So your immune system develops these antibodies, they latch onto the antigens, eradicate them, and even eradicate the bit of the RNA messenger that the vaccine gave you in your cells. And all that's left then in your cells are something called B cells, and these are a bit like memory cells. So what this means is that the next time that you are exposed to a coronavirus, when it comes into your cells and tries to infect you, your immune system, it already has in its memory these antibodies that are needed to neutralise and kill the virus before you get ill and before you get infected with disease. Now, the AstraZeneca vaccine, it also gives your cells information on how to make the spike protein. And as I said before, the spike protein is the bit of the antigen, the bit of the coronavirus that injects into your cells and tells your cells to make more and more coronavirus. So the AstraZeneca vaccine, it does the same by providing your cells with information on how to make the spike protein. Wow. But rather than, it does this by delivering it in a case, in a shell of a part of the common cold virus. Wow. So rather than using the mRNA directly, it puts a bit of the information on how to make the spike protein, but delivers it with a shell and the casing of the common cold. Wow. And it does the same. So again, your cells will decide to start making more and more spike proteins. Your immune system will then get the antibodies, develop the antibodies to kill off the spike protein. It would kill off that and the shell of the cold. Mm-hmm. And then if you come into contact again with the coronavirus, you have those immune cells.
Wow.
And there is some people are worried, saying that, you know, the mRNA technology, does this change my DNA? No, it doesn't. Okay. Your DNA is in the nucleus of your cell. The mRNA does not go into the nucleus of your cell. There's been worries from people that these vaccines were developed too quickly, yes. That they're not safe. Mm-hmm. And this isn't true, because normally when a vaccine is developed, it goes through different stages of clinical trials and different stages of evaluation and effectiveness. Now, when the pandemic hit, it was a whole world response. Everybody needed a solution and a vaccine developed quickly. So none of the stages were skipped. All that happened was that these stages, instead of running sequentially, where possible, they were run in parallel. Also, the Medicines and Food Agency, the regulatory body, normally when a vaccine is developed, you have to submit parts of your research in separate, in stages, in separate parts, and they'll review it and say, yes, that's fine, let's look at the next. For the coronavirus vaccine, manufacturers were able to submit all of their evidence at once.
Gina, it's amazing. I'm not stopping your flow, but that's what they were saying all the time. It's developed too quickly.
Yeah. And also, this technology isn't new, and coronaviruses aren't new. They've been around a very long time. The mRNA technology isn't new, and the good thing about it is that with this technology you can develop vaccines quite quickly, because as soon as you know what the messenger RNA is, you can use that technology to develop vaccines much more quickly. Another question that's often asked is, when you have the vaccine, can you still pass the virus on? So we know that people that have the vaccine have 95% less risk of severe disease than people that don't have the vaccine.
Right.
In terms of transmission, there was a UK study done on UK households in 2021 by the UK Health Security Agency, and they showed that actually in people that were vaccinated, in households where they were vaccinated, there was for only 40 to 50% less transmission. Now, we don't know if that's because you're less likely to transmit it if you're vaccinated, but if you're vaccinated, you're less likely to be infected.
Wow.
If you're not infected, you can't transmit it.
Wow.
So, yeah. And this slide here that's just up now, this just really highlights what I said earlier about the different antibodies needed for different types of pathogens. So if you just see the top left-hand corner here shows the measles pathogen with spikes and the type of antibody that's needed, and the flu just shows underneath that the flu one's slightly different. So just to talk a little bit about what's in a vaccine, because I know a lot of people are concerned about that. So the main ingredient really is water.
Water.
Yeah. Then you have the preservatives and stabilisers. And then there's obviously the active ingredient, whether that is the messenger RNA, or some vaccines they use some of a virus that's part of the virus that's not live anymore. But I've described what's in the COVID-19 vaccines. And then there's adjuvants. Now, the adjuvants, these are required because what they do is, in this case, for COVID-19, it's ethanol, the adjuvant. What it does, it signals to your immune system that you've had a vaccine. So it brings the immune system, highlights it to it, you've had a vaccine, and that there's work needed to be done there more quickly than if it wasn't there. So I think in the COVID-19 vaccine, the amount of ethanol is equivalent to that's in a banana.
Yeah.
And then there's residual traces of substances that have been used during the manufacturing, and these are normally found in the human body anyway, like formaldehyde. There's no animal parts in the COVID-19 vaccine, and it doesn't contain, as I said, it doesn't contain COVID-19, and then there is that small amount of ethanol, which is just going to help alert your immune system to the fact that you've had a vaccine. This slide here just shows really, talks a little bit about herd immunity, which is what we're hoping to achieve when we vaccinate people. So we want as many people in our population to be immune to COVID-19. So if you look at scenario A, I should just start by saying actually the red dots, they represent people that are not vaccinated against COVID-19, and these people are sick and contagious. The blue dots represent people that are not vaccinated but are still very healthy, and the yellow dots represent the vaccinated and the healthy. So if we look at scenario A, you can see that nobody is vaccinated in the top, and everybody's still healthy. And we've got these two people, these two dots that are contagious and sick. And what this results in is a huge amount of the population. Basically, COVID just rips through the population. In scenario 2, you've got a few people sporadically vaccinated, which has some effect on the outcome and the number of people that are infected. And in scenario C, the ideal scenario, most of the population are vaccinated and the spread of the contagious disease is contained.
Right. That's good. That's good.
Okay, so this is questions that we constantly get asked, and especially our engagement teams that are out and about supporting the vaccinators along with our mobile van, which we'll talk about later on in the presentation. And a question has been, why do we need multiple vaccines? Okay, so this video that we're going to play it was developed pretty early on in the vaccination programme, but we still think it's really important to show you why it is important to get one or more dose.
But it's important just to say that this was developed early on, so it doesn't include the booster dose, the third dose or the booster dose, but it's the principles still relate to that.
I love what I'm hearing so far. Education, education, education. So yeah, watch this video. You will be amazed.
Protective immunity forms following infection or the first dose of a vaccine. But why do we need multiple vaccine doses? Immune responses to different infections vary, with some being weaker or fading over time. This is similar for vaccines, so extra doses are needed. Multiple doses are used to maximize the protection that each person receives. For vaccines that don't confer lifelong immunity, booster vaccines give a further round of exposure to refresh our immune memory. Annual vaccines are sometimes needed for viruses that mutate rapidly. It takes time for the body to generate the best immune memory after vaccination, so a gap is needed between the first dose and future doses to let that happen. Often, a longer gap between vaccination doses leads to a better immune response. This allows more time for the immune system to build an initial strong immune memory, so the booster vaccine can have the best boosting effect. However, this needs to be tested and optimized for different vaccines, especially new ones. 2 doses generate the best immune response for the COVID-19 vaccines currently available in the UK. The rollout of COVID-19 vaccines marks the start of a new chapter in the pandemic and will provide protection to individuals to prevent them falling ill with COVID-19. It is vital that everyone gets 2 doses of the COVID-19 vaccine and continues to follow current guidelines on hand hygiene, social distancing, and mask wearing. Together, this will create the most effective long-term protection from COVID-19 disease for individuals and for our communities.
Excuses, excuses, excuses. Why is there such a hesitancy in taking up the vaccine? Kerry, why?
Oh, thanks, Mark. We have done a lot of reading. We've looked at a lot of research that has been done, nationwide here in the UK. And we've also done our own research here in Croydon by developing a couple of surveys, but we've also done focus groups here in Croydon as well. And one of the questions that we would ask is why? Why have you not taken up the COVID-19 vaccine? Because it's been there, we've had our appointments through the door, you see the posters, you see the adverts. But I think what happened during the pandemic was, education. you know, they spoke about COVID-19, but when it came to the vaccine, it was like, you know, what people have been telling us, it's like they've just told us to take the vaccine, but haven't really gone into it in as much depth. And I think that is also time. Because if you think health and social care staff, like we were working in this height of the pandemic and responding to outbreaks, responding to the change of guidelines, etc. But it wasn't really until the pandemic kind of calmed down that we actually were able to look into this in a little bit more details. So these are some of the things that we have heard, you know, as why people have not gone for the vaccine. And I'm just going to touch on them briefly. And I know like we've answered the questions to these as we go through. And we've got a couple of more slides to show you as well. So we've had, I can't get the time off work to go and get my have my appointment, which is fair enough.
Reasonable, isn't it?
It's absolute fair enough. But just to let you know, we were running a COVID vaccine programme whereby the vaccination was available. I'm just going to use Central, for example.
Yes.
It turned into one of our mass vaccination sites, and you've also got Crystal Palace Football Club, also turned into one of our mass vaccination sites, which was running 7 days a week. So we were trying to fit in with everybody's schedule at that time. I can't get all the information I need to make that decision. And I hope by listening to this short presentation, you know, that it will give you the information. And at the end of the day, if you need any more answers, I'm going to signpost you to a really good website that you can log on to. You can ask questions. You can also ring a hotline where you can speak to a clinician if you've got any further questions.
A Croydon clinician as well,
yeah, which is important.
Of course.
And also our van, which we have normally 3 clinicians there as part of the mobile van as well.
Yeah.
I'm just going to pick it. Gina's already mentioned about, you know, the vaccine that was developed too fast, too quickly.
Yes,
it can't be reliable. It
can't
can't be safe because it was developed fast. But I'm going to show you an amazing video very, very shortly as part of this presentation, which will really explain why we were able to come up with this vaccine sooner.
I think one of the things that we haven't actually touched on just yet is about the side effects as well, and the side effects of the COVID-19 vaccine. You may have a sore arm at the site of injection. You may feel fatigued. You may have mild flu and cold symptoms, but this is, you know, part of your immune response. It's not because you've actually got an active infection. And these are far, far less severe than actually getting COVID-19 infection. I mean, you don't just have the acute infection, there's long COVID.
Yes.
We don't really know what the risk factors are for long COVID at the moment. So, you know, you might not think you're in an at-risk group, but it's just worth protecting yourself and others around you.
And I think as well, you know, talking about people saying, well, I don't have asthma, you know, I very rarely get the cold, I've never had the flu. But at the end of the day, you know, you may feel healthy, you may feel fit, but you're not only protecting yourself, you're protecting your community. Like, who actually wants to go into another lockdown? Like, if you hear those words, it actually would send shivers up your spine now. So we all need to pull together here. We all need to have trust in this vaccine that it has been produced, you know, to protect everyone. And
actually, arguably, it's the most tested vaccine in the world because it's the whole world
contributed to
nearly loads of people across the world have taken it. It's arguably the most well-tested vaccine in the world.
So we just thought we would just touch on some of those, what we've actually heard through the hesitancy, and hoping that it's kind of the next couple of videos will, you know, clear up some things for you.
Good.
I just put this up, like the reasons vaccine were designed too quickly to be safe and effective, which Gina's touched on. And as I said, this next video will hopefully touch on that a little bit more. Now, this is the amazing Dr. Corbett.
Yes, she's amazing.
Now, this video is on YouTube. She's a vaccine scientist. She's absolutely fantastic. Now, the video itself is about 6-7 minutes long, but we've just picked out about 1.5 minutes to 2 minutes that we really want people to home in on. Because as I said in the introduction, you don't need to be a scientist to have these conversations, because she will actually tell you something very simple that can be very powerful when you're entering into these conversations with your peers.
Let's watch this video. You're going to be moved by it. Dr. Corbett.
lot of people got the idea that this vaccine development was rushed because the administration had put the term warp speed on it as we out here were trying to figure out what was going on. We were hearing vaccine experts come on this program and others and say, 3 years would be fast. If they get one in 3 years, that'll be really fast for this kind of situation. But what had you been doing for the previous years that allowed you that burst on that weekend?
We'd been preparing. We had been studying other coronaviruses for so long at that time, for about 6 years, so that we knew exactly how to move in the case that this coronavirus started to circulate in China and then eventually all over the globe. So you just prepare for moments like this by studying viruses within the same viral family.
And you wrote recently about how you are not giving up. You get dispirited about it like everyone else, but you are not giving up in trying to convert people to taking the vaccine who have not wanted to or have been reluctant or have been adamantly against it. What are some of your one-on-one success stories?
There are so many, and I don't even like to call it convert. What I like to say is that I like to provide people with the bit of knowledge that they feel like they are missing in order to decide for themselves and for their families and loved ones to take the vaccine. So oftentimes what that takes is just a little one-on-one conversation, answering questions for people, and reminding them that I am here on a consistent basis to do so, and that the journey that we all are taking in this pandemic, we're taking it together. And so I'm a vaccine scientist, but at the end of the day, I'm also a professor, and I am a fiance, and I am a daughter, and I am just a regular human being who also has a lot of questions. My science allows me to answer them for myself, and I just like to translate that information to every one person who asks.
You say that your approach to this is to just be ready to listen. You're not someone who walks into the room and says, "Hey, I worked on the vaccine. Who wants to know about it?"
You know what? I actually prefer not to walk into rooms that way because oftentimes I get bombarded if I do. But, for me, where we are in this moment, in the wake of the Omicron variant, where only about 60% of us adults in this country have been vaccinated, we are in this moment where we really need to approach this with a little bit of tenderness and with a listening ear. And so that's where I stand. I don't go about boasting about the vaccine data, although it is continuously beautiful. I just really just listen to people. And then if they have a question, I say, would you like me to answer that? I leave the floor open for them at all times so that if they are willing, they can have their question answered.
Dr. Corbett says, lead by listening. We need to have a conversation. Kerry, what do you think?
Yeah, I think we all need to be having conversations, about COVID-19 and vaccinations. And I think it's more wider than just the COVID-19 vaccines. I think we've kind of lost that vaccine fatigue all over because we've kind of seen a dip in vaccination uptake. Okay. And, it could be to do with the pandemic, but hopefully we can get back into a routine, and it's really looking after ourselves, isn't it? But I think with the COVID-19 vaccinations that you're having with your peers, and especially working in public health and within the health sector, you're often getting challenged about the vaccine. But I just love what Dr. Corbett said. It's like, what do you do when you enter a room? Because technically speaking, she developed this vaccine and you think that everyone's going to hunt her down and, kind of have these kind of challenging conversations with her. But she simply just wants to listen. And I think that's really...
Listening is important though, isn't it?
It's as important as entrance.
Move off so quickly. Listen.
And as you said, it is important because it's not just in terms of COVID-19 vaccine, but we have seen, because of the anti-vax rhetoric that's come around because of the COVID-19 vaccine, the vaccination rates for other infectious diseases, very important children's immunisations have also dropped. And particularly, if you've got these skills to be able to listen, to be able to try and support people to find out factual information and to work through their fears and worries with them, That's really important. Especially in Croydon, we have very, very low rates of vaccine uptake across the board.
I know you're going to share more, but I think it's crucial. We've got to listen to the concerns.
Yeah.
We've got to listen to people, deep concerns, where they're at on this, and able to help them through or to navigate through this situation. If we ignore them and just throw things at them, I think there will be a bit of a resentment coming back to us. So you're right.
And don't be worried about having the conversation because you don't know because you're not going to know the answer. Because quite often we don't know the answer.
Right.
You have to go. It's about having the skills to navigate to the right place to find the answer.
Yes. Yes.
And I think, we need to be sensitive as well, because people will be coming, to speak about their sensitivities towards this vaccine. But I just kind of think if we can give simple factual information, and we've actually given you, even if you show the two clips of those videos, using simple language.
Yes.
Like, we don't want to start Googling, COVID-19 myths, etc. We want to give proper factual information, around this. And I think if you keep to the facts and stick to the facts in a simple way, and I kind of think really avoid making any judgment, towards that person or people, because we don't know what your personal experiences are. We don't know what you have gone through.
That's right.
You could have people that actually have had COVID-19. You could have had people that actually have had some of the side effects, with the vaccination. But I kind of just think simply listen to it.
And at the end of the day, you may not change somebody's mind, and you might not be, but behaviour change isn't going to happen overnight.
No.
You might have planted a seed.
That's
the
right.
next person that speaks to them about that will water that seed.
Yeah.
And eventually behaviour change, they might change their mind, or they might not, and that's their right as well not to.
But we've got the right, with the research, to tell the truth, the whole truth, and nothing but the truth.
Yeah, and then it's
have a conversation.
Respecting people's decision, and it's their decision.
Yeah, so hopefully everyone will have a bit of a conversation, moving forward around this.
Excellent.
So locally, I think this is important as well.
Of course.
So we have the South West London Integrated Care System. This is their website, and I know we can leave it up there for people to, look at the website. It's got Q&As on there. So, and these have been answered by clinicians as well. And we've also got the hotline here as well. It's the South West London hotline with no pressure to get the jab. Okay, and that, I think, even if someone comes to our mobile vaccination bus, which is a pop-up mobile van that attends and pops up in 4 locations.
Brilliant.
Oh, they're absolutely fantastic.
Brilliant.
You will see us in Thornton Heath, just outside Tesco's, and that's on a weekly basis. You will see us at North End, opposite Primark. And a new site that we've added on over the last kind of 3 weeks has been the Tesco Purley.
Yes, I've
and
seen
we've
it
had
there.
some great conversations there. Now, you will get our pop-up van schedule on the Croydon Council website.
Good.
Now, we're going to be running for another 3 weeks.
That's
the service will come to an end on the 25th of October, but I think it's important to say, that pop-up service may be coming to an end, but it doesn't mean to say the offer of the vaccinations are coming to an end.
And actually, you probably, as we go into winter, if you are going to have your COVID vaccine, you probably want to go somewhere indoor where it's going to be a bit warmer, rather than to the pop-up van.
I hear that.
And the other thing about the hotline, that is a really good resource for people. If you are having conversations and you need to find out a bit more information, there's something you're unsure about, you phone that number, you can speak to a clinician and they can provide you with that information.
Excellent.
Yeah. So again, like the pop-up van, it's no pressure to jab, as we've got clinicians there every day along with our fantastic engagement team. They've seen some fantastic numbers. We're hoping to reach the 2,000 vaccination mark by the end. We only started it off as a 6-week pilot.
2,000 people.
Nearly 2,000, yeah. So we're just hoping that we can reach that significant number by the end of the programme.
Fantastic. Gina, Kerry, what an experience. The truth unfold. We know there's a lot of hesitancy out there. We need to have the conversation. And I really hope that this program will speak to you maybe give you a change of mind, or begin to get the thought process moving to move towards, I need to protect myself. Has it gone away? No, it's still with us, but we can do something to protect ourselves. Thank you for taking this time out. And I want to thank my guests. So well done. Absolutely. The truth is out there. You've just released it into the atmosphere. And I pray that your work continues to go from blessings to blessings, because people need to hear this message. Thank you so much, Kerry, Gina. I'm grateful to you. Please, we most likely will put some information on this particular broadcast, that if you need further information, and I'm sure we'll put the information at you if you need to make contact, that you can get good information, that you can do the right thing. As I said, we want to engage in our community. We want to touch relevant, important issues that we can at least be able to set somebody free and make them feel they're doing the right thing. Join us next week, and thank you for being with us. And remember, you're the head and not the tail. Thank you.
Christian Church, where you're the head and not the tail.